Hello, everybody. David Schuster here. One of the latest Epstein documents released by the Department of Justice accuses Donald Trump of rape. Headline: Unnamed victim alleges Trump raped her. Quote: Among the newly released materials is an FBI case file FTA 000200518 dated October 2020 that contains an allegation of rape involving Trump. The document does not identify the source of the allegation, as names and other identifying details have been redacted.
I need to talk to you about something that just surfaced in the latest batch of Epstein documents, and it's serious enough that we can't ignore it, even though the Trump administration desperately wants us to. Buried in thousands of pages of files that the Department of Justice released, there's an FBI case file from October 2020 that contains a direct allegation of rape against Donald Trump. Not innuendo, not speculation, an actual documented accusation that the FBI received and filed away. And the way the Justice Department has handled this tells you everything about how terrified they are of what's really in these files.
The DOJ website does not make this document very easy to find. You can see on how page 61 the PDF files go from FTA 000200517 to FTA 000200520. But if you look in 20517, you will find the document. Here's more reporting on 20518. Mediate rape claim. An FBI case file from late 2020 includes a rape accusation against the president. A limo driver said he overheard a very concerning phone call Trump had in 1995 where Trump kept saying the name Jeffrey.
The document is labeled FA 0020518, dated October 2020, and it contains details that are disturbing even by the standards of what we already know about Trump's history with Epstein. The source of the allegation has been redacted, names and identifying details blacked out to protect whoever came forward. But what wasn't redacted is damning enough. According to the file, this allegation didn't come from the victim directly at first. It came through a limousine driver who said he overheard a deeply concerning phone call Trump had back in 1995, where Trump kept repeating the name Jeffrey. During that call, according to this driver, Trump made references to abusing some girl. But the story gets worse. This same limo driver said he later drove Trump with a woman in 1999, and that woman told him directly that Donald Trump had raped her along with Jeffrey Epstein.
The limo driver, who has his name redacted, said Trump made references to abusing some girl. He later discussed driving Trump with a woman in 1999, the unnamed limo driver said. Donald J. Trump has raped me along with Jeffrey Epstein, the man said the woman told him. The limo driver said he urged the woman to tell the police, but she said she can't because they will kill me. The woman was later found with her head blown off in Oklahoma. To be fair, the limo driver's account of hearing from a woman that Trump raped the woman.
Think about what that means. This wasn't secondhand gossip. This was someone confiding in another person about what had been done to her. The limo driver said he urged the woman to go to the police. Her response was chilling. She said she couldn't because they would kill her. And according to this driver, that woman was later found with her head blown off in Oklahoma. Now, the Trump administration's Justice Department immediately tried to get ahead of this by posting a note saying these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. They want you to believe these are politically motivated fabrications, false accusations timed to damage Trump during an election.
Well, that would be considered hearsay in a court of law and not allowed in as evidence. However, the accusation itself is incendiary in the court of public opinion, and that may explain why the Department of Justice has made it so challenging to find. The DOJ also posted this note on X saying, some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false. But how does the Trump administration's Justice Department know these claims are false if they were never pursued or investigated?
But here's the problem with that defense. How does the Justice Department know these claims are false if they were never properly investigated? That's the whole issue with the Epstein case from the beginning. Allegations came in, names were provided, victims cooperated, and then nothing happened. No serious investigations, no prosecutions of the powerful men who were clients and accomplices. The Justice Department is claiming they know for certain this rape allegation is false, but they can't actually know that without having done a thorough investigation at the time. And all evidence suggests no such investigation occurred. They received the information in 2020, filed it away, and now that it's being forced into public view, they're scrambling to dismiss it without having to actually address the substance of what was alleged. That's not how justice works. You can't declare something false simply because investigating it would be inconvenient or politically damaging. Let me be clear about the legal standard here. In a court of law, what the limo driver heard from the woman would be considered hearsay. It's someone testifying about what someone else told them, and generally, that's not admissible as direct evidence. But hearsay rules exist to protect defendants' rights at trial. They don't mean the underlying allegation isn't true. They just mean you need more direct evidence to prosecute. What the limo driver's account does establish is that there was a victim who made this accusation while she was alive, who apparently feared for her life if she went to authorities, and who ended up dead under violent circumstances. That's not nothing. That's a lead that should have been investigated thoroughly, especially given Trump's documented history with Epstein. And here's something that should make everyone suspicious about how the Justice Department is handling this. They didn't make this document easy to find. If you go to the DOJ website and look at the PDF files they released, they go from file number FA000200517 directly to FA000200520. The file containing the rape allegation, number 20518, is missing from the sequence unless you specifically know to look for it inside file 20517. They buried it. They made it as difficult as possible for anyone casually reviewing these documents to stumble across this particular accusation. That's not transparency. That's concealment with just enough plausible deniability to claim they technically released it. But that's not the only bombshell in these newly released documents. There's also a jailhouse letter that appears to be from Jeffrey Epstein himself, written to Larry Nassar, the infamous USA gymnastics doctor who sexually abused hundreds of young athletes. The letter is disturbing in multiple ways, but it includes what appears to be a direct reference to Donald Trump. Epstein writes about how he and Nassar shared a love and caring for young ladies in the hope they'd reach their full potential. Then he adds this: "Our president shares our love of young new girls. When a young beauty walked by, he loved to grab snatch, whereas we ended up snatching grub in the mess halls of the system." Read that again slowly. Epstein is explicitly grouping Trump with himself and Nassar as men who share a predatory interest in young girls. He's making a direct reference to Trump's infamous Access Hollywood comments about grabbing women by the genitals. And he's saying that Trump's position of power is the only thing that kept him out of prison while Epstein and Nassar faced consequences. This is Epstein himself in writing, connecting Trump to his criminal enterprise involving minors. Now, you might argue that Epstein could have written this letter specifically to implicate Trump, that maybe he was angry or trying to drag others down with him. And that's possible. But it fits with everything else we know. It fits with Trump's own public statements about Epstein over the years, calling him a terrific guy who enjoyed women on the younger side. It fits with photographs of them together at parties. It fits with flight logs showing Trump on Epstein's plane. It fits with the fact that Epstein had Trump's contact information and they moved in the same social circles for decades. This isn't one isolated piece of evidence. It's part of a pattern. An Epstein survivor reacted to this letter on CNN and said something important. That group of men enjoyed the company of young women and children, and that letter emphasizes Trump knew what was going on. She said that complicity alone is enough for her to know he has no business being in a position of power, and she's right. Even if we set aside the direct rape allegation, even if we only focus on what's undeniable, Trump at minimum knew about Epstein's predatory behavior and continued associating with him. Trump was complicit in creating an environment where Epstein could operate, where powerful men looked the other way or participated while young women and girls were victimized. But the documents suggest it goes beyond just knowing about it. According to at least one person the FBI interviewed, Trump didn't just know about Epstein's crimes. He participated in them. He raped a woman. Trump has denied any wrongdoing in the Epstein case, but Trump's denials mean very little at this point. He's also denied traveling on Epstein's plane more than once or twice, and now we have documents showing he flew on that plane at least 8 times between 1993 and 1996, according to an early 2020 email in the files. Trump has lied repeatedly about the extent of his relationship with Epstein, which raises obvious questions about what else he's lying about. The email documenting those flights has the sender and receiver names redacted, but whoever sent it clearly had access to flight records that contradict Trump's public claims. Trump has tried to minimize his connection to Epstein, acting like they were casual acquaintances who occasionally crossed paths at social events. But 8 flights on a private plane over a 3-year period isn't casual acquaintance behavior. That's a close relationship. That's regular contact. That's the kind of access that would have given Trump plenty of opportunity to see what Epstein was doing and potentially participate in it. What's striking about Trump's public response to all of this is how subdued he's been. Usually when Trump is attacked, he goes on the offensive. He attacks back harder, calls people names, threatens lawsuits, makes a huge spectacle. But when it comes to the Epstein files, he's been almost eerily calm. He tried to dismiss it during that press conference about naval vessels, saying he thought the Epstein stuff was finished and trying to change the subject. He's not showing the kind of righteous indignation you'd expect from someone who's truly innocent and being falsely accused. He's acting like someone who knows there are things in those files that could destroy him if they get enough public attention. And here's the thing that should terrify everyone. The Department of Justice has only released about 15% of all the Epstein files in its possession. 15%. We're seeing rape allegations, letters connecting Trump to Epstein's predatory behavior, evidence of many more flights than Trump admitted to, and that's just from the tiny fraction that's been made public so far. What's in the other 85%? What are they still hiding? Even more concerning, the DOJ has not released any of the Epstein videotapes. Multiple witnesses have testified that Epstein recorded nearly everything and everybody in his mansions. Documents released so far confirm that Epstein had an elaborate surveillance and recording system set up. He was filming his guests, probably as insurance, probably as blackmail material, definitely as documentation of who was doing what with whom. Those tapes exist somewhere. The FBI seized them when they raided Epstein's properties, and they're not being released. Think about what that means. If there are videotapes showing Trump or other powerful men in compromising situations with young women, possibly minors, those tapes are being kept secret. The American people are being told that we need to just trust that nothing on those tapes rises to the level of prosecution, even though we've already seen that the Justice Department's bar for prosecuting powerful people connected to Epstein is impossibly high. They've decided not to charge anyone else despite having 100,000 pages of documents and testimony from victims. Why should we believe they'd release videotapes that could actually prove guilt beyond any doubt? One analyst going through these documents pointed out something crucial. Everybody in Epstein's orbit, including Trump, knew what Epstein was doing. There are references in the files from people like the former Duke of York talking about inappropriate guests and young women. Nobody was confused about what was happening. This wasn't some secret operation that Epstein carefully hid from his friends. It was happening openly within that social circle, and people like Trump participated in that world, knowing full well what it was about. According to reporting from the New York Times, Trump and Epstein's relationship was built around a shared desire for young women. That was the foundation of their friendship. And here's something technical but important that shows how the Justice Department is trying to manipulate even the search function. When you initially tried to search the released files for Trump's name, nothing showed up. But if you searched for Trump with a space after it, multiple items appeared. That's not an accident. That's someone deliberately structuring the files so that a casual search for Trump wouldn't return results. You'd have to know specifically to add a space, which most people wouldn't think to do. It's a way of technically complying with transparency requirements while still hiding information from everyone except those who know exactly how to look for it. This level of manipulation should outrage everyone. These are supposed to be public documents released pursuant to a law requiring transparency about the Epstein investigation. Instead, we're getting files that are difficult to search, rape allegations buried in weird numbering sequences, crucial documents representing only 15% of what exists, and no videotapes at all. The Trump administration is violating the spirit and arguably the letter of the Epstein Transparency Act, and they're doing it to protect Trump and others in his circle from accountability. By all accounts, Trump and Epstein were incredibly close. They shared everything according to people who knew them. They were best friends for years, partied together, traveled together, talked regularly. That friendship only ended when Trump needed to distance himself for political reasons. But you don't just accidentally become best friends with a sex trafficker. You don't repeatedly fly on his plane, attend his parties, introduce him to your social circle, unless you know who he is and what he's about. At minimum, Trump was willfully blind to crimes being committed right in front of him. More likely, based on these documents, he was an active participant. The rape allegation specifically deserves a real investigation. I understand the legal limitations of hearsay evidence. I understand that the limo driver's testimony about what a woman told him wouldn't be sufficient on its own to convict in court. But that's not the standard for starting an investigation. When you have a witness saying a victim disclosed rape, when that victim supposedly ended up dead with her head blown off, when the accused has a documented relationship with a known sex trafficker, that's more than enough to open a serious investigation. Talk to other people who might have known this woman, look into the circumstances of her death, check phone records from 1995 to see if Trump was calling Epstein around that time. Do actual detective work instead of filing the allegation away and declaring it false without investigation. The problem is that doing that kind of investigation might lead somewhere the Justice Department doesn't want to go. It might produce evidence that would be impossible to ignore. It might create pressure to charge Trump with serious crimes. And since Trump controls the Justice Department, that's never going to happen. Instead, we get these carefully managed document releases designed to create the appearance of transparency while hiding the most damaging information. Even Fox Business News recently admitted, probably accidentally, that Trump's economic policies are disasters. They reported that unemployment hit 4.6%, the highest since September 2021, and that October saw a loss of 105,000 jobs. But those economic failures will get more coverage than rape allegations in the Epstein files because our media is broken. They'll spend hours debating tariffs and trade policy while giving minimal attention to documents suggesting the president participated in sex trafficking. This is where we are as a country. We have an FBI case file containing a rape allegation against the sitting president connected to the most notorious sex trafficking case in modern history. We have a letter apparently from Epstein himself explicitly grouping Trump with sex offenders and saying they all shared an interest in young girls. We have flight logs showing Trump lied about how often he was on Epstein's plane. We have a Justice Department actively working to hide, minimize, and dismiss all of this rather than investigate it properly. And we have a president who's subdued and evasive when asked about it, rather than aggressively defending his innocence the way he does with every other accusation. The release of Trump-Epstein evidence has just begun according to the documents we've seen so far. That 15% represents thousands of pages, multiple disturbing allegations, clear evidence of a much closer relationship than Trump admits to. What happens when the other 85% comes out? What happens if those videotapes ever surface? What happens when more victims come forward emboldened by the fact that some of this is finally becoming public? Trump and everyone else connected to Epstein are betting that they can run out the clock, that public attention will move on to the next scandal, that the sheer volume of other controversies will bury this story. They're counting on exhaustion, on people getting overwhelmed by too much information, on the complexity of the case, making it hard to follow. But we can't let that happen. These are serious allegations about serious crimes involving the most powerful person in the country. This isn't a distraction from his policy successes or failures. This is a question of whether the President of the United States raped women in connection with a sex trafficking operation, knew about crimes against minors and did nothing, or actively participated in those crimes. The answer to that question matters more than unemployment numbers or naval vessel names or any other political issue we could discuss. Because if Trump did these things, if he's implicated in Epstein's crimes, then nothing else about his presidency matters. You can't overlook rape and sex trafficking because you like someone's tax policy or immigration stance. And if the Justice Department is actively covering up evidence of presidential involvement in these crimes, then we don't have a justice system anymore. We have a protection racket for the powerful. That's what these documents reveal, not necessarily proof beyond reasonable doubt that would convict in court, though that may exist in the unreleased portions. What they reveal is a system working overtime to avoid accountability, to dismiss serious allegations without investigation, to hide evidence from public view, and to protect Trump at all costs. And as long as that continues, as long as we accept carefully managed document releases and dismissive statements, instead of demanding real transparency and real investigations, we're complicit in whatever crimes occurred. We're saying that some people are above the law, that power protects you from consequences no matter what you've done. That's not the country we're supposed to be, but it's increasingly the country we are, and these Epstein documents prove it.